about Spiritism, and we're going through the book Through the Mist. It's available on PDF. I have a link to it, how you can download it from my Facebook site, that you can download this free PDF. It's a great book. It's by a spirit who risks to remain nameless. Before we begin, let us have a short prayer. Dear Jesus, thank you for having all of us here on our video today, listening and talking about the spirit world so people can explore on their own. What is the spirit world? What does it mean to them? And how they can help themselves, and hopefully it will motivate themselves to learn more about the spirit world and about Jesus Christ and about how to become a better person. Amen. So, again, before I begin, if you are interested in Spiritism, I would suggest that you read the Spirit's book. It's also, this is in PDF, and I would recommend it greatly. You can find it on PDF by going to any search engine, type in Allan Kardec space PDF. It'll give you not only the Spirit's book but his other books as well. If you would like to get a short introduction, overview of what Spiritism is, I would recommend my free PDF book, Spiritism 101, The Third Revelation, and that is on my site, nwspiritism.com. And again, it's on PDF. It's free. It's also in French for those interested in that. And of course, if you want it in Kindle or paperback or Audible format, you can find it there. So let us begin this wonderful book. Let me take that off. So this is chapter 2, the Judgment Hall. And as I'm reading this, is first I'd like to make sure everybody understands this. In all the different literature and the different meetings I've been in, there's so much a range of what happens after you pass over. And just even let's just take it down to people who are going into heaven. There is a great range in that. It's not all of like I am going to read for you. Some people it is. Some people they'll have teams of spirits that will take you to some sort of convalescent where you think you're in this kind of wonderful hospital room, but with no machines, and you won't even know you're in heaven. In fact, in one of the books by uh, Chico Xavier, the people, there's two people died. They were both going in for an operation, and they said, they got better. And this woman says, "Well, I feel better." And she knew she was in some sort of hospital room because a nice, like, nurse-looking person came in and said, "How are you?" And a nice doctor came in and said, "How are you?" Then she kind of recovered a little bit. She goes, "Well, where's my family? And you're not the doctor that I had my operation by." And it was, she just, and they said, "Oh, everything will be okay. Your family's fine too." And it took her a while, and they didn't want to shock her, but she found out she was really in a kind of a way station, a convalescent home in heaven. And so it's you never know. There's always different ways, and I think the theme for people who go to heaven is the way you're put into heaven is probably the most comfortable way for you, for your individual personality. And what is the rule though is that you are Spiritism tells us that you are still you when you pass over. You didn't become an angel. You didn't become full a fountain of wisdom like a lot of us had hoped. You don't know everything. You're still you, and you don't even know how to use your powers, so to say, because you have a lot of powers. You can volitate, which is movement by thought. Your mind changes your dress. You can create with your mind, but you don't know that at that point in time. You're not aware of that. You haven't been trained. And in fact, I did a whole video series on Violets on the Window about a young woman, Patricia, going to heaven, finding out the classes she went to and how she was trained and all the new things that she found out in heaven. So let's start chapter 2, the Judgment Hall. My reflections ran in something like the following strain. So I digress for 1 minute. He had run out into the middle of a busy street, and this is before the car, and there was all sorts of horse and buggies going back and forth. There was this little boy sitting down in the middle of the road. He rushed out to rescue him, and he woke up in this kind of this amphitheater, this grass amphitheater, and he could tell that there was these people coming and going, kind of from fog way off in the distance, and he knew that there were separate people. There was people here that looked like they just came from Earth, and there were people that were dressed in different color robes. So let me go on. A land of surprises, is it? Yes. And why did he not say a land of revelation as well? This is the spirit that just talked to him, the spirit that took the boy from him, because he still had the boy in his arms. And he said he didn't recognize the boy because he was kind of like a dirty little street urchin. And then now he's in his arms. He's this beautiful, beautiful boy that any painter would love to paint. So, anyway, how long have I been here? An hour, a day, a month? I know not. By my idea of time, it seems as if I had just made that attempt to save the boy. But measured by the revelation, I felt as if I had been here for years. How strange that I should have no knowledge how I came away. I did not fall, felt no pain, had no indication of reviving from a swoon. How was that? How many people cloud their lives with fear born of the dread they feel of dying? How many teachers delight to dwell upon the terrors of that hour when the soul stands face to face with death? How vastly different has my experience been? Of course, again, he felt nothing. The last thing he remembered, he ran out to save the boy, and then he was here on this grassy knoll. So, why did that happen? Why was his death so painless? It was a wonderful death. And that's because he deserved it. He was a really good person. And you'll find out more of, of what he did. And if you look at the very first chapter that I did, he went through the slums of London and helped people. And he was a very moral and spiritual person. So, hence, he had a very wonderful death. Some people, it's different. Even in heaven, some people have to go through a little bit of pain. But again, spirits have told us that even the people who were in the uh, Circus Maximus during the time when they had Christians, killed by animals, by beasts, a lot of times what would happen to those Christians, they'd be there, and then the beast would like just start to attack them, and they would like faint, and they would feel no pain. They would be taken to heaven without feeling any pain. So that is the way a lot of that is. So don't don't worry about pain as you're dying. It's not a dreadful experience. In fact, the wonderful spiritist author Leon Denis, oh, you can find a lot of his books too on PDF. In fact, I have a list of that. He says that actually death is much easier than birth, because birth is tough, but death is much easier. I'll carry on. I wonder whether among all the surprises of this life I shall find it possible. O God, I know not yet where thou art, or who thou art, but the revelation which has been given to me is full of love and bright with promise. Therefore, I feel it has come from thee and fills my soul with hope. I know not yet if I am saved or lost, but in thy mercy hear me, and in thy pity for the sons of men permit me, if it be possible, by some means which I do not know, by some method thy love is able to devise, once more to make my voice to reach the mortal state, and to help lift the weight of error lying upon the shoulders of my fellow men. Thou knowest, O God, the blindness and ignorance of those who profess to lead thy children on. Many have not tasted thy great love. Many have not felt thy grace. Many are groping in the dark. Blinded by the traditions of men, many have wandered from the fold. The songs of Zion have been forgotten in the greed for fame and wealth and power, and weary pilgrims tramp their homeward way with sighs and groans and tears, beating time to the rhythm of their march. If any joy is here for me, O God, my Father, I'm ready now to forfeit it. If the penalty I must pay is agony in hell, I'm willing to endure it. If in thy mercy thou wilt send me back with the power to tell the truth of thy unchanging love, and lift the load of doubt from those who seeking know thee not. And he says, is it wrong of me to say I know not where or who God is? Perhaps so, but it is honest, and I cannot think that honesty is right. And this is a theme he has throughout the book, is he wants to go back, and which he's done with this wonderful book, but he wants to go back and say, this is what heaven's like. He was in a very strict Christian household, and I forgot what denomination his father was. I think I can't remember if it was Methodist or what it was, but very strict. And of course, he was always told that the fires of hell were waiting for him if he went off the path, which is not true. I mean, look, this is what Spiritism tells us. If you're a good person, no matter if you're baptized or not, no matter what religion, or if no religion whatsoever, if you don't even believe in God, don't even know who Jesus Christ is, if you're a good, charitable, fraternal, honest person, you will be sent to heaven. Now, when you're in heaven, you'll figure out, oh, okay, I was a little bit wrong here. I should have had a little bit more, knowledge of the spirit world. But the fact that you were a good person, that is what is the main thing. Now, I will say it's much easier to understand spirituality and to understand how you should react to your temporary earth life if you do have some sort of religion, because all religions have good parts to it, all of them. I mean, they may have some strict rules that you think are not necessary, which is fine. I happen to agree with that, but a lot of that in the core, they are hopefully telling you to love one another and to follow the golden rule. And if that's what the spirits have said about spiritism, is if you want to break it down and summarize it in one sentence, that's follow the golden rule, because the golden rule is is everything, right? Treat others as you would like to be treated. That is the 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 basic tenet of spiritism. And so it's all about when you're on earth. Well, okay, why are you on earth? Now, spiritism says you're on earth many times. You're on earth to improve yourself. Why do you need to improve yourself? Because when you go into heaven, as I read these different books by you, and as you hear these things, you know that in heaven, thought is action, and therefore, with your mind, you can create. Now, as you're in the lower levels of heaven, and if you're even below that, you really can't create much with your mind. You don't have that much power, and you don't even know how to use it. But as your mind becomes a better device, and you're calm and you're cool and you're full of love, you'll be taught more and more how to utilize the power of thought, because you have an immense power. Jesus and other spirits fashioned the whole solar system. Jesus and other spirits fashioned the earth, the moon, the environment, and led the creation of life. All of that. All of that they didn't do with their hands, they did with their mind. In the Old Testament Genesis, God said, God said light, and there was light, and He said the word, and it's so true, because the word is thought, right? You could say God had the thought instead of God said the word, almost the same, and that's how it works, and that's why we go through this, what I like to call a simulation on Earth, which is you are always a spirit. Your spirit brain isn't inside your body. Your body's covered by your perispirit, but you're connected to it. And that's why when you dream, you're kind of confused, because you can only get so much data through that small little pipeline, and it can only be filtered and understood so much by your kind of inferior physical brain, right? Look, even the smartest Einstein on Earth is not as smart and swift of thought as spirits. So you're not here to be a genius. You're not here to accumulate vast amount of wealth. You're here to change your character and your attitude, because that is what you are. You are a personality. You are an encapsulated, logical spirit who is full of emotion and love and trust and charity and goodness and wanting to serve. And as you go up, those will be magnified. For those who are still down in the lower zones or below in some sort of purgatory, you're full of hatred and sarcasm, and you're not going to be allowed to be in heaven and to use your mind to create. That's not going to happen, because what are you going to create? You're going to create bad things. That's why, and I understand a lot of people say, well, God has done this to me, and I don't want to be reincarnated anymore. And I've heard spirits who say, well, they just want us to be slaves, and they want us to all think alike, and all these things of what lower spirits will say, because they're rebellious. And well, I think we've all been there. We've all, even teenagers, were rebellious against authority. And here you have Jesus and God, who is absolute authority, but it's with a velvet glove. Your free will isn't trespassed. You can be as stupid and unchanging and rebellious as you want. You just go where you have to go to be with those like you, and that's not a nice place. So I'm here to tell the incarnates and the discarnates is it's all it's going to do to be rebellious against a God who created you and who's created this process. It's just going to slow you down from finding true happiness, because yes, you're going to have to bend the knee. You're going to have to get with the program to a certain extent, but the program is beautiful. The program is lovely. The program is this environment of love and ecstasy that it's almost impossible. I cannot describe. And in fact, even people with NDEs, when they've talked to spirits, and some spirits have said, no, 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 don't hug me, because if you hug me, you'll feel the whole love of this environment and you'll never want to go back. So, but I understand people not like being told what to do. But that's why Christ said you have to be humble to enter heaven, like humble like a child, because if you really appraise the situation honestly, we know very little. And that's why I'm here. I'm trying to tell everybody enough of what to expect, what the true reality is. It's not where we think we are. It's not having two houses and a great car. The true reality is we're in this simulator called Earth, and our true person is a spirit, an immortal spirit. And we're in school, and we're saying, hey, you're somewhat immature. You've got a lot to learn. Get rid of your primitive emotions. Okay, I will carry on. Everything around me is so contrary to what I expected. I feel afraid to trust to anything. So, of course, anything I knew. And that is where he is just like, I can't believe I was told so many incorrect things. And the torment of yearning for my fellows to know the truth as far as I behold it forced me to breathe that prayer. If some strong hand could, but for an instant, tear the veil aside and bid the multitudes of earth behold the future as it really is, whatever revelation it would be, how it would change their sighs to songs, remove all doubts of God's eternal love, and proclaim a gospel for which all hearts are crying. It would be to earth what it is to me, I who more than once or twice or thrice had been cautioned that the life I led could only meet with condemnation at the bar of God, and yet I found the first words addressed to me were words of hope and encouragement. I need not fear. How different a declaration is made on earth, where the love of God is limited to suit the requirements of every sect, while wrath and retributions are left as infinite quantities to drive the sinner to salvation. What can such teachers think when they awake to a knowledge of the truth? I have found it here. So this is where he wants to know that he wants everybody to know God is real and God and the love of God is unlimited. Now, I understand a lot of religions always warn you about damnation, right? And they want and it's understandable, right? Because some people only will change their character because of pressure, right? Fear. Well, many don't, but I think fear is usually counterproductive. And that's why God doesn't come down to earth and say, okay, everybody, I'm God. I'm so much more powerful than you, and this is what's going to happen if you go off the wrong path. And they would just follow the good path out of fear and not out of their innate new character and personality they've created by the fire and trials and tribulations of many lives. So that's why God is so and Jesus are so brilliant, because they're letting us become good at our own time frame, and our own path. And they're letting us create, as we go through trial after trial, our own unique personalities. What a genius process that is. All our impurities will be taken from us, and we will come out a very pure, wonderful person who loves and serves. And yet we have our own little humor, our personality, everything, our own way of laughing. And so we're not like, it's not like what people think there's an army of angels and they all look the same and they all march the same. No, we're all unique. That's right. God didn't make angels, he made us who become angels. And all angels have their own look. In fact, spirits have said that when one spirit saw Jesus and he could see all, everything in him that he's gone through on earth and his life. And then he said, okay, then I saw his ministers and other people around him, other angels around him, and they all had their own unique look. And they all had within their face and their countenance that they've been through good times and bad times, and they've all been molded in their own unique manner. And that's what we are. We're all unique. It's how many trillions, quadrillions of spirits are there in the world? I don't know. It's fantastic. The more you understand the spirit world, it is really beyond our understanding. But we can start grasping some of the tenets. That's all I'm trying to do here is grasp some of the organizational and the processes of it. Okay. Here, I'll carry on here, but where is here? That is a question that has not yet been satisfactorily answered. Is it heaven? No, surely not. Or if so, how strangely different from the harping, singing, crown deck throng the church expects to find. It is not. No. All the surroundings are just as incapable of such an interpretation. What then can be the condition of this place? Remember, he's on the glassy mountain. People are coming and going, and there's spirits going through the fog, and they're bringing people out, right? People have just died. Is it possible that there's an intermediate state after all? Perhaps so. And over the crest of these hills, the judgment throne may stand, to which I shall be summoned by and by. I had not thought of that. But the suggestion comes without a trace of fear. The words that I heard fill me with hope, which I am sure can never be betrayed. Whatever the issue may be, I am content to learn it in the usual course of events. In the meantime, I will rest. Yeah, he just died. He deserves to rest. And of course, this is again now on the judgment throne. Talking about that is everyone judges themselves. Now what I've heard from other mediums, and from another medium, she was part of a group that actually a couple of mediums that would take people who just died and take them to whatever the city they were going to, and they would be met kind of like a social workers and a group of spirits, and they would discuss their life, what they did right, what they could have done better. And of course, the same thing you'll read in near-death experiences, where one guy said he was met by this woman, said, "Oh, follow me." And he went through this forest, and in the middle of this wonderful forest was this big round table, and there was a bunch of people around the table, and he said, "I thought I knew them, but I couldn't put names, but I just felt like I knew them, which they probably wasn't allowed to know them yet. And he went through his life and he saw parts of his life. He said, but I was never made to feel bad. I was just shown how I'd done when I was on Earth and maybe what I could improve on. And then he said at the end, he said, well, I think you need to go back. Here's some stuff you need to improve on. He said, yep, I do. And he came back, he was more spiritual. Another person had an NDE and he was going through these life scenes. And he says, oh, stop. I can't believe I did that. And the other spiritual say, oh, that's not important. That's not important. And he'd go through the next one. And he goes, oh, I want to look at that more. He goes, no, that's unimportant too. And so he wanted to go through and he wanted to analyze every wrong thing that he could see. And they told him, no, it's not as important. And then when he wrote to me about his ND, he said, I finally understood that what I've gone through was as important as it was unimportant, which I think is brilliant. And in the fact that what he meant is, as you go through life and let's say you did something, you hurt another child, you feel bad about it, but that was important to you, and maybe you got punished, but it was unimportant in the long run because it was just one more step in you becoming a better person, saying, oh, I'm not going to do that again. And so this is how, and the people who are judging you are probably the ones saying, no, you're okay. Everyone's done that, because I've been told by spirits over and over again, or read from spirits, I should say, is the person who's the harshest, meanest judge is yourself. And in fact, when people who are in heaven, these like this person, when he reincarnates, he will help create his own trials and tribulations. He'll help create his own body. He will create how long he's going to be on. He'll be part of that process. Now he'll have input from other spirits, and spirits probably a bit wiser than he, and he should listen to them. But he's going to be part of that process. So if you're like, oh, I don't like the way I look, or I wish I could do that, if you really have no one, what you really need to think of is like, okay, I was made to look this way, and I was made to have these parents. Must be for a reason. So, and I was probably part of that process, so I shouldn't get too mad about it. Okay. Let me carry on. It is a popular idea that our entrance to the spirit world will be greeted by friends and relatives who have preceded us, and sometimes that does happen. And in many cases, this is so, right? And especially with children, they try and bring someone familiar to them, like an aunt that passed, or someone like that, or a grandmother, grandfather. But strange to say, even after I learned the nature of the change which had come over me, the thought of such a meeting never occurred to me until I felt, rather than heard, someone call my name. I turned and saw a young woman, clad in the daintiest of pink robes, coming down the hill towards me. I was not sure, but thought her face bore a resemblance to one I'd known in the long ago, except the old furrows of care and want had been transformed into lines and curves of beauty. I had long since forgotten her, but she remembered me, and with eyes brilliant with welcome and hands extended to clasp my own, she was the first of all I knew to greet me. 1,000 welcomes, she cried as she grasped my hands. I have but just received the news of your coming. Am I the first to meet you? Yes, Helen, the first of all I know. Well, I'm glad of that. I'd always hoped it would be so. I have watched and prayed and waited for it. It is all I can do to thank you. Thank me for what? I asked in astonishment. So now here is Helen. He probably knew her as haggard looking and old. And now, as you're in heaven, you look as you want to look. And as the spirits tell us, if you're young, you kind of look a bit older. If you're old, you look a bit younger. You look how you want. Some people want to look in their 20s. Some people want to look in their 60s and have some gray hair so they can look dignified. It's just how you think of yourself. I'll carry on. I need not tell you that, she answered. Our Father knows, and he will repay you. At that moment, I found that heaven is quite as much a condition of the soul as a locality, and true friendship is a great factor in completing that condition. Only a short time before Helen's advent, I had almost satisfactorily assured myself that I was not yet in heaven, but her appearance had reversed the decision. It had brought me such an overwhelming sense of joy. I was so satisfied I had no conception there could be more happiness to follow, and this resulted from the presence of one to whom I had been but imperfectly known on earth. Her story, as far as I knew it was not a long one. Her mother had died of sheer starvation in her endeavor to maintain three children and a sick husband by her labors as a charwoman, supplemented by Helen's scanty wages in a match factory. The girl was but 15 years of age when the whole burden of that home fell upon her shoulders in its heavier form of greatly diminished means. Bravely she struggled on, toiling far beyond her strength to keep the wolf of hunger at bay and save the home from its threatened destruction. But the wages for matchmaking are more easily counted in coppers than gold, and the little extra she could earn in other ways was but a drop in the ocean of their requirements. So she fell in the heat of the battle, crushed and broken hearted. I learned her story just before her death and called to see her in the hospital where she was lying. On several days, I sat for a half hour or so trying to comfort her with the assurance that the children would be cared for when she was taken away, for I found the uncertainty as to their welfare was the sharpest thorn in her dying pillow. She was deaf to the missionaries' entreaties to prepare her soul for death. She had no fear for that, did not care about herself. She wanted to know the children would be safe, and when I gave her a solemn promise, she grew calm and closed her eyes in peace. Now, here's a wonderful young lady who was given a hard trial, and she probably picked that trial herself to help the children. Now, most probably, I would say in a past life, she may have abandoned children or done something like that, and she wanted to repay that debt and try to help them as much as possible, even help them until her death. So, you can tell she was not a selfish person at all, a wonderful person. And so you can say, as people will, they go, oh, poor Helen, she helped the children. It was horrible that God took her like that. But in fact, it was a blessing. She'd done her trials and tribulation, and now she's in a much better place. She's in heaven. I'll carry on. Her personal connection with those children I had long forgotten, since our acquaintance was of such brief duration. But in the first moments of that reunion, I felt I discovered one of those consolations for which I had long been seeking a sister's love. Are you surprised that I should be the first to meet you? She asked. I can scarcely say. Surprises double on each other so rapidly that I begin to think they are natural here. If not surprised, are you glad that you have met me once again? Yes, Helen, more than glad, I answered, for your sake quite as much as for my own. You have been happier here than you expected, have you not? Yes, much happier, and has always seemed to be increased by your assurances that it would be so. Once I almost feared you were wrong, but when I found that you were right, for your sake, I was increasingly glad. So it reminds me of a story that uh, how people are just surprised when they wake up in heaven. There was this wonderful story of about two soldiers. This is during World War I, and a spirit was there, and he was going to meet some soldier coming up. But then his buddy, who was in the trenches with him, World War I was mostly trench warfare, was sitting next to him, looking, waiting for his friend to come, and he he and the spirit were waiting, and he saw this young man start walking up a path. And the spirit went down and said, hello, young man. How are you? He goes, I'm fine, but I'm not quite sure where I am. He goes, well, you know, I think it was you've gone west or you've gone east. There was a euphemism they meant to know that they were dead. He goes, And then he stood up and he saluted. He goes, well, I don't have my kit. What am I supposed to do? He goes, you don't have to worry about following orders here, although you'll want to follow them because all the orders are correct and just. But you've come over, you are, you're loved. You've led a good life. You've tried as hard as you could. And he goes, well, thank you, sir, because he was, he's an enlisted man, and he was, very obedient. And he says, now here's your friend, and he goes, oh, I can't remember the friend's name, but I think it was like Jake or something. He goes, Jake, and then of course they talk to each other. And the story is that he had saved Jake's life when Jake was wounded, and he took him he was wounded in some sort of bombed out crater, took him back to the front lines, and he was cared for, but he died of his wounds later, but he tried to save him as he could. And Jake says, yes. And then he said, Jake, when I was in the trench and I felt like my death was coming to me and not to worry about it, was that you? And he said, yes, that was me. I was there with you, and I tried to tell you, don't worry about it. It's going to be fine. And so his friend came down from the spirit world and said, look, you're going to be shot, but don't worry about it. It's going to all come out nice. And that's why it's just a beautiful story. And then here he was. Now, the way he died is all of a sudden he found himself on a path kind of walking up, and then he was met by a spirit he didn't know who kind of explained things to him. And then he was met by his friend who he knew had passed before him. But it's always, there's a million different combinations and permutations how people can wake up from their tendency on earth. And that's why the physical body isn't that important. I like to say important. It's important, but it's not vital. And let me just go over this. So let me hide this and show this. So again, just for everyone edification, is we have to think ourselves as this. And I'm showing a picture here of a spirit, a paraspirit, and a body for those who are listening on the podcast. So a spirit is this logical encapsulation of everything that we are, right? We have we have every memory, and we may not have every memory of every past life, of every minute of everything inside us, but we have, I'm not sure of that, but we have a connection to where we can retrieve it if we so wish. But only in past lives as far back as we are allowed to have. Your perispirit is what is the mold upon which your physical body is created, although your physical body will have within the parameters as possible by the DNA of your parents, with some working by higher spirits if you are that level of person to have that help. But your perispirit is when you die and you think that you're still alive because you don't look any different, and you feel your arms, you feel your face, and you think, well, I'm still alive, but that's your perispirit. Your perispirit, when you're on Earth, connects to every cell of your body, and it has the different chakras, like they say, from the Eastern religions. And of course, Spiritism calls them 4 centers, but they're about the same, and it controls your body. Now, when you die, your perispirit detaches from your body, and it cuts the silver cord. Now, even the silver cord is referenced in the Bible. And in fact, with some people who have NDEs, they'll say, some people don't notice it, they'll look behind them and say, oh, there's a silver cord that's following me everywhere. And the silver cord is elastic and goes, who knows how many millions of miles or whatever, because it's logical. But that always means that your body's still alive and your perispirit really is still controlling it. So when you are in heaven, the heaven is such a complex piece of living database, let's say, and living light and images, right? Because that's how the yogis talk about. It's all light, and you can call it that way. And it's the property of those images that's important, is what they represent. So if you're a spirit and you want to see things, if you're high enough spirit, if you want to see things just in logical computations and processes, you can do that. But not for us normal people who are in heaven, in probably all the regions around the earth, is we see each other like we have a body. Now, but the paraspirit is influenced by the spirit that says how we should look and puts clothes on us. We don't have to wash our clothes. We don't have to sew our clothes. On the lower level of heavens, they may give you clothes, so you don't yet know how to create them on your own. But as you go higher, you create your own clothes, and you create your own youth. In fact, one person had an NDE, and she was in this little like waiting room, and she noticed that people would come in from one side, and like they just died, right? And this one woman with red hair, a little bit older, came and sat next to her and goes, I don't know what happened to me. And then she said, but I think I died, but I'm not sure. And then other spirits would come and they'd take people individually out. But the interesting thing she said is, as she was talking to that woman, her hair got more vibrant and her face, less wrinkles, right? She started looking as she thought she looked. She was probably died when she was 40, 45, and she started looking like she was 25, because that's how she perceived herself. And so her paraspirit was responding from her own thoughts. And she did not even realize that she could create by thought, which is the other spirits tell us, is that most of them don't even realize the power they have. Okay, I'll carry back on here. Let me hide this. Okay. Okay, yeah, so let me carry on. I'll make sure I'm in the right place. Yes, much happier, and always seemed to be increased by your assurances that it would be so. Okay, I read that one already. So then he responded, it always appeared to me, I responded, that whatever was done for love's sake could not be wrong. I did not profess to know much about God, and now I am conscious of knowing even less than I thought. Still, I have not changed my idea. Why, God is love, Fred. That is all we know about him. Oh, his name is Fred. I didn't notice that when I read it the first time. That which is born of love is also born of God. Come home with me and let me tell you what I have learned about him since I came here. Not yet, I answered. You must not forget that I've just arrived and do not know where I have to go at present. Then she said, you will learn all about that as you proceed, she said, as she turned to go. Come with me now. Goes, but have I no one to see? Is there no? And she saw the perplexity and uncertainty which must have been so plainly visible upon my face, at which she smiled and asked, is it the judgment seat you are looking for? Yes, for at present I know nothing of my position, no, nor where I must go. Fred, get the earth ideas out of your head as soon as possible. You have already passed the judgment hall and carry its verdict in the dress you wear. Oh, interesting. Passed where? I have no knowledge. Perhaps not, but it lies there in those mists from which you see so many coming into the plain. And as she spoke, she pointed in the direction which my attention had been previously called. So it must have been that he didn't even need to meet with other people. They said, oh, we don't need that, kind of the social group meeting and talk about that. They said, no, you're going right. You're going right there. And so one of the things when I started reading about heaven, I was worried about, what are you worried about when you're in a big organization? Is the bureaucracy, and that you are nothing but a number, and that everyone's treated the same no matter what, and there's no exceptions to anything. That's in heaven. Everyone is, there are processes and procedures, but people are given the authority to make their own judgments, and they may make some judgments wrong. They say, oh, you'll learn. And so it's just a wonderful environment. So they must have thought for him that he doesn't need that. You're going right to the grassy knoll, and then we'll have Helen pick you up and take you where you need to go. And that was all. And of course, Helen is a spirit, right? In some place. And she was probably told by the power of thought, hey, your friend who helped you on your deathbed is going to be at this location. Now, what happens is they will give her that thought, and then they'll also send a image of where that location is in her mind. And then she can use her mind to go to that image, and then she'll be there. And in fact, that was talked in the Revelation where they said that, here was this guy on the throne, and they were like, I think it was like lightning or shiny swords coming out of his mouth. And that's what spirits have said, that when a spirit thinks of something, it sends a message to a person. You don't see that, but when they send an image, it looks like a little bit of light coming out of their mouth. And what spirits have said, how they communicate, is they send both, right, to make sure that people completely understand and there's no possibility of error in the command, which is anyone who's good at communication always wants to make sure there's no possibility of error in the command. So they send thoughts and they send a picture, and maybe a short little movie. I don't know. He goes, past where? I have no knowledge. Perhaps not, but it lies there in those mists for which you see so many coming to the plain. And as she spoke, she pointed in that direction to which my attention had been previously called. Is that the way I came? I asked. Yes, that is the only way of entrance into this life. I knew nothing of it, was not conscious of anything till I found myself lying here where we are now standing. Well, that's quite possible, since yours is one of those sudden passages which hurry you so quickly into the state as to leave no consciousness of the event. I often think it is a great blessing to come in such a way. So I want to stop here, and we'll carry on next week with this chapter. And I hope, this reveals so much, and it tells us so much. And these writings by mediums back here, and this is by the mediums R.J. Lees, they just enlighten us. And this is not a spiritist book, and yet it supports. And this is why I've written a book about like near-death experiences. When my book, The Spirit World Talks to Us, is that if you start compiling all this different information, it supports the tenets and the revelations by Spiritism more and more. And that's where I love to for people to understand on their own what is going on. And that's why I've written this one book. After you finish the Spirits book and Spiritism 101, I would recommend my book, The Spirit Realm. Spiritism has revealed the reality of our existence. And I take from all the different spiritist literature and then all my other books and I try to distill it down as what is the spirit realm? What is the physical realm? What are you? What are you capable of? How do you ascend? All that, so that you can, and then how you're guided and what your future is going to be. It gives you context in which to place your life. And the amazing thing is when you have that context and when you really understand why you're here and where you are going, your stress levels fall away, because like everything becomes more amusing and like, oh, okay, well, that's why that happened to me. That's why someone stole my car. I must have stolen something in a past life. I ticked that box off, right? So what? I get a worse car. I'll survive. It becomes that you really understand your own aspect in life, and you don't have any envy or jealousy of anyone who has more material goods of you, because that's just completely unimportant. So but in my other books, I go down and much deeper, like Heaven and Below, more about heaven, the lower zone, the dark abyss, and things like that. And I talk about spirits, the spirit universe, and how we're guided by spirits in book 2 and book 3. And then I also have my book, The 7 Tenets of Spiritism, which you'll see right behind there, this way, which is more of my personal account of how I found Spiritism, what Spiritism means to me. Hopefully I have a lot of written literature that you can read and pursue, but there's also other literature that you can read and pursue besides Allan Kardec. There's uh, Francisco C. Xavier, which is, I call him Chico, so you don't misunderstand what I'm talking about. He has published more than 500 books, about 450 before he died. A good amount of those are in English, and I would recommend No Solar, which is, again, right here. That is the first book in a series of books by Andre Luis, The Spirit. The marvelous books. In fact, No Solar was made into a movie called Astral City, and I would recommend that you rent that. I bought that from Amazon, and we watch it at least once a year. It's just a wonderful movie. Uh, the funny thing is that it doesn't follow the book exactly, right? Because, well, it's a movie, first of all, but it follows the mood. I've never seen a movie follow the mood and the feel of the book better than that movie. It's just amazing. And then also, for those who have Netflix, please find a movie called Kardec. And it's on Netflix, and it's all about Allan Kardec. And it's made by the same director who did No Solar. And I can't recommend that enough. So hopefully there's a lot of and I tell you, this is exciting reading to me. I read these books, and I'll read them over and over again because I find other little gems of information. But I tell you, the first time you read them, there's just so much in there, and it is so exciting to understand really what the world is, and it's not what you thought it was, and it's not what our culture and society wants us to do. Right? What does our culture and society wants us? Wants us to be materialistic consumers, because we should always be buying, because that makes the ruling class wealthier. Well, no, you don't. That's not important. And God bless them all. If that's what they want, they'll learn that's not that important. So I think the more you expose yourself to this, the more you will feel better, and it gives you it takes away the fuzziness of what other religions have about what's the afterlife, and why we're here and who you really are. It gives you concrete tenets to hold on to and say, okay, now I understand. So anyway, I just want to say that, and I want to say God bless everyone, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of the week.